SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි.
Tonight, better use. Sri Lanka calls for a reduction in the global military budgets.
Sri Lanka joins others in its call to stress the importance of the reduction of these expenditure and urges that these resources be directed towards economic and social development.
No to external takeovers. Foreign Minister tells the Secretary General of the Commonwealth that the island needs sufficient space for the local institutions to deliver on their mandates in its reconciliation. Making ends meet. Finance Minister proposes slashing ministerial expenditure. Better late than never. COVID vaccine filling plant designs elaborated.
Sinovac was the candidate, but China has informed even Sinopharm is a possibility. If there's a possibility to export, yes, then we will consider.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Sunday, the 19th of September, 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamma. Now then, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris has told the Secretary General of the Commonwealth that when it comes to Sri Lanka's reconciliation process, the country requires sufficient space for the local institutions to deliver on their mandates. During a virtual meeting with Patricia Scotland in New York, he had also said that this is an ongoing process and the work done by these institutions cannot be replaced or taken over by external bodies. Referencing the ad hoc mechanism that the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights is trying to establish, Professor Peiris said that it is not acceptable to Sri Lanka and it is also not in line with the spirit and letters of the UN Charter. The Foreign Minister, meanwhile, had reaffirmed Sri Lanka's active commitment to dialogue and engagement with the Commonwealth. Secretary General Scotland had appreciated Sri Lanka's continued collaboration with the Commonwealth in a wide spectrum of areas, including trade, sports, youth and countering violent terrorism. Sri Lanka is one of the 54 member states of the Commonwealth and hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2013. In the meantime, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa arrived in New York to participate in the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly that will get underway on Tuesday. The President will address the Assembly on the 22nd of September and will also address the Food Systems Summit as well as the high-level dialogue on energy during the week.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who left Sri Lanka for the United States to attend the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, arrived yesterday at the John F. Kennedy Airport in New York at 2:30 p.m. New York time. The President was welcomed by Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mohan Peiris. The 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly will commence on Tuesday, the 21st of September, under the theme Building Resilience Through Hope to Recover from COVID-19, Rebuild Sustainability, Respond to the Needs of the Planet, Respect the Rights of the People, and Revitalize the United Nations. According to the President's Media Division, President Gotabaya will be addressing the Assembly on Wednesday, the 22nd of September. The head of state is also expected to address the Food Systems Summit on the 23rd and high-level dialogue on energy on the 24th. In the meantime, the Foreign Ministerial Level Summit of the Assembly will begin tomorrow. Further, President Gotabaya is also expected to hold bilateral discussions with several heads of state during his visit to New York.
Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mohan Peiris, calls on the global community to reduce military budgets. Addressing the open-air formula meeting of the UN Security Council under the theme, the threat to international peace and security posed by the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons, He reaffirmed Sri Lanka's commitment to eradicate illicit small and light weapons from the country.
The statistics that is often reported of the widespread proliferation of around 1 billion small arms in circulation across the globe, available to terrorists, organized criminal networks and gangs, and parties involved in armed conflict, is a very alarming one. The illicit menace of arms trafficking fuels civil wars and exacerbates regional conflicts, replenishes the terrorist arsenals, drug cartels, and other armed groups, and contributes to the increase in violent crimes and criminal activity and grave human rights violations. Every year, gun crime kills over 250,000 people and injures many more. The fear of being assaulted with firearms or being caught in a crossfire confines people to living behind high walls and locked doors. Last year, it was estimated that half of all violent deaths for the period 2010 to 15 was caused by small arms and light weapons, numbered over 200,000. In looking at sustainable development issues at a global level, it is noted that global military expenditure has steadily increased and has now exceeded $2 trillion, the highest level since the end of the Cold War. Sri Lanka joins others in its call to stress the importance of the reduction of these expenditure and urges that these resources be directed towards economic and social development for the betterment of humanity. Sri Lanka remains committed to the prevention, curbing, and the eradication of the illicit trade in small and light weapons, and is a signatory to the UN Programme of Action to combat the proliferation of illicit arms and light weapons in all aspects, and has established a national commission against the proliferation of illicit arms to address the spread of such weapons in the country. In 2001, we collectively adopted the United Nations Programme of Action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all its aspects. As we mark 2 decades of the Programme of Action, or perhaps a little more, it is my humble plea that greater steps must be made to address all related aspects of the problem of illicit small arms, including weapons collection and destruction, adequate legal and policy frameworks, institutional arrangements, proper stockpile management, as well as education and awareness. We underscore that any measures relating to conventional arms control, including small arms and light weapons, must be taken on the basis of placing human beings at the center of all efforts. Sri Lanka stands ready to reaffirm its commitment to disarmament agenda and the vital importance in curbing the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons.
In the meantime, UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice, reparation and guarantees of non-recurrence, Fabian Salvioli, has accused Sri Lanka, saying that human rights situation in the country has deteriorated in the past 18 months.
At the 8th meeting of the 48th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council last Thursday, Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice, reparation and guarantees of non-recurrence, Fabian Salvioli, said that a profound deterioration in human rights situation have been witnessed during the last 18 months. This accusation came in the backdrop in which the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, announced her concern on judicial proceedings in the number of emblematic human rights cases in Sri Lankan courts.
En Sri Lanka, los últimos 18 meses.
In Sri Lanka, the past 18 months have witnessed a profound deterioration in the human rights situation, which jeopardizes the transnational justice process. I deeply regret the lack of implementation of the recommendations made in the report, the insufficient progress in relation to the search for the truth, and the flagrant setback in the areas of accountability, memory, and guarantees of non-repetition.
Del Consejo para el Diálogo Interactivo. Muchísimas gracias.
In response to the statement made by the Special Rapporteur, Sri Lanka's permanent representative to Geneva, C.A. Chandra Prema, said that Sri Lanka poses a successful democracy which never had an unelected government since it gained independence.
We note with profound regret that even in the middle of all the conflict, death and destruction taking place in the world today, one country saw fit to single out Sri Lanka for mention in their intervention at the interactive dialogue with the Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice and reparations. Sri Lanka is not a country in a state of conflict. We are completely at peace and we are a successful democracy that has never had an unelected government since independence. Many countries are perplexed by this preoccupation with Sri Lanka among certain quarters. It can be clearly seen that the situation in Sri Lanka does not warrant the attention of this council in this manner. The Special Rapporteur's comments at the commencement of the interactive dialogue gave an indication of what this is all about when he stated that there has been a profound deterioration in the human rights situation in the past 18 months. What happened 18 months ago is that Sri Lankans elected a new government through free and fair elections, a fact acknowledged even in HRC Resolution 46/1. The present attention on Sri Lanka is due to the fact that certain parties are not pleased with the choice that the people of Sri Lanka made at that election. We call upon all UN member states to note that this preoccupation with Sri Lanka therefore has nothing to do with promoting democracy or human rights, but is based purely on political interests.
Now, in other news, Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa has proposed expenditure cutbacks at ministries in a bid to finance essential expenditures of the government. In a communique, the minister has asked ministerial secretaries to report as to how much in savings can be made by adopting a series of proposals submitted by him.
Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa says in a cabinet communique that the government is unable to maintain its essential expenditure due to an unexpected decline in government income as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The finance minister has outlined that limiting the expenditure on ministries through a review will be effective in order to counter this situation. Accordingly, the minister has presented 8 proposals for the purpose. It includes the temporary suspension of programs, purchasing, constructions, building renovations, which haven't commenced yet, despite provisions having been allocated for them. It has also been proposed by the Minister of Finance to postpone the recruitments for positions that are vacant, although initial steps of recruitment have been made. Another proposal by Minister Basil Rajapaksa is to view the beneficiary register and limit the provision of benefits only to low-income earners. Further, the subject minister also proposes to halt welfare programs, assistance in development and provisions of any allowance or subsidies that haven't been approved by the cabinet. Limiting the non-salary allowances and reimbursement of bills following the approval of ministerial secretaries and heads of departments of the officers who are actually engaged in duty without providing it to all officers in general is another proposal. The finance minister has also proposed to halt the distribution of materials, goods, equipment and financial grants distributed as financial assistance with the usage of provisions allocated to capital development programs. Finally, the Minister of Finance requests the ministers to direct their ministerial secretaries to take immediate action to inform the Treasury what the savings would be after taking the outlined steps. The relevant circular pertaining to the proposals is expected to be issued next week.
We will see you on the other side of this break. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the accreditation process pertaining to the setting up of a vaccination filling plant in the island is being delayed owing to the lengthy bureaucratic process involving the World Health Organization. Now, this was told to First at 9 by State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana.
Sri Lanka began its vaccination drive early this year by using 500,000 AstraZeneca vaccine doses donated by India. However, Sri Lanka was only able to procure just one more consignment of AstraZeneca from India, as the country had to prioritize its citizens due to a sharp spike in COVID infections that led to a near collapse in its health system. This incident, coupled with the United States' decision to stop vaccine manufacturing material to India, led to a delay in the vaccine procurement process and stalled the immunization drive. But after overcoming that early hurdle, Sri Lanka has now fully vaccinated over 50% of its total population. All this while, the prospect of setting up a vaccine filling plant in the island with the help of China was being processed in the background. An existing plant was to be used for the purpose, however there were some delays in getting the project off the ground.
There was a proposal to produce or fill-in and dispensing part to be done in Sri Lanka, but it is a time-consuming process. To take the accreditation through the WHO, it takes some time. We have applied from the CRO office, Southeast Asian office, WHO. They have appointed a person, but due to the COVID-19 surge, he is unable to come to Sri Lanka and do the assessment. So now we are planning to do the online assessment. Meanwhile, we received a significant amount of Sinopharm vaccine from China. So now there's a query whether whether we go forward with the vaccination plant or not, because majority of Sri Lankan crowd is already vaccinated. If there's a possibility to export, yes, then we will consider.
According to initial discussions with China, the Sinovac vaccine was supposed to be filled and distributed. However, Professor Jayasumana says that there is an alternative as well.
Earlier, Sinovac was the candidate, but recently China has informed even Sinopharm is a possibility of dispensing and filling part can be done in Sri Lanka. You know, there's a huge demand for Chinese vaccine in the African continent. If you have a chance, yes, we can consider it.
Meanwhile, earlier this week, the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka announced that China had decided to donate 1 million Sinovac vaccine doses to Sri Lanka. But as for plans of its use, there aren't any yet.
Chinese embassy in Colombo have announced they are going to donate 1 million doses of Sinovac vaccine. It is yet to decide where we are going to send these vaccines, because you know, majority of the Sri Lankan population is already vaccinated with a single dose. There's no specific place where we can send the Sinovac vaccine. It is yet to be decided by the Communicable Disease Committee what will happen to the Sinovac vaccines.
In the meantime, Sri Lanka received a consignment of 120,000 doses of the Sputnik vaccine earlier today. The consignment was taken by refrigerated lorries of the Sri Lanka Pharmaceutical Corporation to the central warehousing complex in Colombo.
It will be sent to Kandy district. Hopefully, we can complete the vaccination program in Kandy by next Wednesday.
Fractional vaccination against COVID-19 is not possible just yet, but mixing and matching jabs is quite all right as long as it involves the AstraZeneca vaccine and any mRNA jab. This is the stance of the World Health Organization as the global community goes in search of more efficient and effective methods of combating the pandemic.
Mixing and matching of COVID vaccines had been a popular topic and continues to be so. It was brought about as some countries faced a shortage of a particular vaccine to complete full vaccination of its populations. The emergence of stronger variants of the COVID-19 virus was also a factor. Even after months of study, the landscape has not changed much on vaccine mixing and matching.
We don't actually have the evidence for most of that mixing and matching. We do have evidence on both the immunogenicity and the safety of combining an AstraZeneca vaccine dose with either of the mRNA products, the Pfizer or the Moderna products. These are safe things to do. What we know is that you get a better response if you start with the AstraZeneca vaccine and then give the mRNA vaccine, but both approaches can work. Apart from that, we don't yet have the evidence on other mix and match regimens, but those trials are underway.
In this age of social media where the proliferation of unverified information is commonplace, speculation was rife about the safety of vaccine mix and match approach.
What we know about the safety is that the amount of reaction in your arm and some of the general short-term reactions that people get, you know, not feeling well or a low-grade fever, are generally speaking the same whether you mix and match or whether you use the same regimen.
Just as there's a conversation about the need for booster doses, there seems to be a conversation building about the prospect of administering what is called fractional doses. Dr. Catherine O'Brien gave an update on this front as well.
We know that in the future there may be some evidence that says that there may be a need for booster doses, or it may be possible for some of the vaccines that we have to reduce the dose and optimize the supply by doing that. The research to evaluate whether or not what's called a fractional dose, so a fraction of the usual dose, whether that's effective, that research is going on. We don't have the answer to that question yet. This is the kind of question and kind of research that's been done for polio vaccines and for yellow fever vaccines and others. So this is not a new area of research or a new question that we've never explored with vaccines before. For now, we don't recommend fractional doses, but we're looking forward to that research coming forward.
We will see you soon after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, activity at the Colombo Bourse is expected to slow down during the week ahead due to the existing selling pressure in the market. The all-share price index closed at 8,801.95 last Friday after losing 46.09 points, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks lost 18.12 points to end at 3,291.87. Now here's Dimantha Matthew to tell us what we can expect at the Colombo Stock Exchange during the course of the week.
Looking at the upcoming week, we feel that the market will be a bit slow because of the selling pressure that is there in the market. The market may adopt a bit of a declining trend, specifically on counters that have had significant uptrend over the last couple of months. So those are mostly retail favorite counters. So with those set of counters likely to have a bit of a correction, we feel that the overall turnover levels also are likely to be slightly lower than previously, but is likely to maintain moderate levels of turnover. Even the activity levels are likely to slightly decline, but again maintain the moderate levels. We feel that the transportation sector and capital goods sector may continue to be in the limelight of the investor interest. We feel that there will be a shift towards more defensive counters as the market declines in value. So there could be more interest coming into banking sector counters and selected dollar income companies that have not really moved up in value.
Four space tourists on board the SpaceX Inspiration 4 mission safely splashed down off Florida's coast yesterday after completing the first ever 3-day mission in Earth's orbit with an all-civilian crew.
Newly minted citizen astronauts comprising the SpaceX Inspiration 4 mission safely splashed down in the Atlantic off Florida's coast yesterday. They completed a 3-day flight of the first all-civilian crew ever launched into Earth's orbit. SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, dubbed Resilience, parachuted into calm seas shortly before sunset, following an automated re-entry descent. The return from orbit followed a plunge through Earth's atmosphere, generating frictional heat that sent temperatures surrounding the outside of the capsule soaring to 1,927 degrees Celsius. The astronauts' flight suits, fitted to special ventilation systems, were designed to keep them cool if the cabin heated up. The Inspiration team blasted off on Wednesday from the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, atop one of SpaceX's 2-stage reusable Falcon 9 rockets. Within 3 hours, the crew capsule had reached a cruising orbital altitude of just over 585 kilometers, higher than the International Space Station or Hubble Space Telescope, and the farthest any human has flown from Earth since NASA's Apollo moon program ended in 1972. It also marked the debut flight of Elon Musk's new space tourism business and a leap ahead of competitors, likewise offering rides on rocket ships to well-heeled customers willing to pay a small fortune to experience the exhilaration of spaceflight and earn amateur astronaut wings. 2 rival operators, Virgin Galactic Holdings Incorporated and Blue Origin, inaugurated their own space tourism services in recent months with their respective founding executives, billionaires Richard Branson and Amazon.com founder Jeff Bezos, each going along for the ride. Those suborbital flights lasting a matter of minutes were short hops compared with Inspiration 4's 3 days in orbit.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.